Roughly 2 million years in the past, on a beach located in East Africa, a diminutive hominid reached out its hand to seize a fish, but the jaws of an enormous crocodile snapped shut, amputating its leg. The fangs of a beast exceeding 22.97 feet, equivalent to 7 mines, in length punctured the muscle, breaking bones, and the individual was dragged into the water while still standing. This is no product of fantasy. It depicts the violent death experienced by our early ancestor, as shown by actual fossil remains. Out of every human species, Homo habilis faced the shortest and most brutal life. Their average lifespan was only 12 years. More than half of the fossil specimens suggest they died before reaching adolescence. Considering that contemporary humans typically live beyond 70 years, their life expectancy was about a sixth of ours. What led to such premature death? Was it simply the absence of medical treatment? Or maybe their very lives were teetering on the edge of death? The fossils studied by paleontologists offer the explanation. Craniums displayed puncture injuries from saber-toothed felines, limbs exhibited crocodile bite indentations, and the entire skeleton was covered in tooth marks from hyena packs. They were essentially prey humans occupying the most inferior position within the food chain. Today, we examine the story of Homo habilis, possibly the most unlucky species in our ancestry. We will follow the trail of the terrifying predators they faced, the unforgiving habitat, and yet the extraordinary achievement of surviving for 650,000 years. Homo habilis is an ancient hominid that lived in Africa from approximately 2.3 million to 1.65 million years ago. Its name means handyman, owing to its capacity to manufacture simple stone tools. Yet, their hand skills provided only a minor survival benefit. The reason is simple. Their bodily build was excessively fragile. They stood approximately 3.94 feet, equivalent to 1.2 m, tall around 30% shorter than contemporary humans, and their body mass was merely 60% of our present average. Moreover, their bone framework was extremely delicate. Fractures occurred even with slight impacts, and healing from wounds was difficult. Their physical form embodied an intermediate phase between chimpanzees and present-day humans. Their limbs were comparatively extended, and their hands and feet were excellently suited for tree climbing. In truth, their primary dwelling was within trees to avoid being caught by predators. It is thought that Homo habilis looked similar to chimpanzees, which often fall from trees at least once in their lifetime, leading to serious harm. Nevertheless, the safety offered by trees was short-lived, since these creatures weren't plant eaters. What is striking is that, relative to other early hominins, Homo habilis ate a particularly large quantity of meat, as shown by fossilized tooth and jaw features. Their strong front teeth and sturdy jaw had developed to rip and grind meat, but the difficulty was in obtaining it. Direct hunting was beyond the physical capabilities of Homo habilis. Due to their small build, weak muscles, and basic stone implements, they could not catch large prey. As a result, they took up a different survival approach. Instead of hunting, they scavenged looking for remains left by other meat-eaters and removing the leftover meat. This strategy came with lethal consequences. Studies suggest that, at most, Homo habilis could handle creatures such as jackals or cheetahs. Against bigger predators, they had no defense. Moreover, back then, East and South Africa were full of a great variety of big meat-eating animals. These carnivores not only competed for dead bodies, but also considered Homo habilis as possible food. One of the most hazardous hunters was a saber-toothed feline called Megatheon. It was about as big as a jaguar, yet much heavier and more powerful. Its legs were similar to a lion's, and its claws were extremely sharp. When it caught something, 2 huge canine teeth would penetrate the neck, severing key blood vessels and making escape impossible. There were even more horrifying methods of killing. On a Homo habilis fossil, tooth impressions were found on the skull's rear, and studying the bite angles revealed a surprising finding. The attack came from the front side, not the back. This suggests that the Megatheon closed its mouth around the whole head, enveloping it entirely. This assault technique produced direct damage to the skull and brain, and at the same time sealed the nasal and oral passages with its jaws, causing suffocation. Carbon isotope measurements. Research showed that Megatheon frequently hunted Homo habilis. This carnivore preferred early humans over any other type of prey. To these animals, our forebears were a delicious food source. Megatheon wasn't the sole danger. Another saber-toothed cat called Dinophilis, along with huge cats like Homotherium and Machairodus, also presented a hazard. Machairodus, in particular, is considered one of the biggest cats ever discovered, with some individuals weighing over 881.8 pounds, equivalent to 400 kilograms. Its body size matched that of a grown male polar bear. Considering its bulk, a single paw swipe could potentially kill a person. Machairodus's hunting approach was extremely deadly. Despite being huge, it had short limbs, which made long chases impossible. Rather than that, it depended on its extraordinary jumping ability. Its leaps surpassed those of all other felines in both height and length, making tree climbing an almost futile means of escape. Machairodus could chase its prey up into the branches, which explains this. In contrast, Homotherium instilled fear using a completely different approach. Its fangs were both short and wide, ending in tips shaped like a rough saw. That structure allowed it to rip flesh and cause hemorrhage with a single snap, leading to swift demise. The threat did not come only from the large cats. Hyenas also constituted a living nightmare for Homo habilis. A specific species, Pachycrocuta, was especially terrifying. It ranked among the biggest hyenas ever, with a body comparable to a lion's. Its size alone was not the source of its fearsome reputation. Instead, its bite force was the key. Pachycrocuta is thought to have had the most powerful jaws among all land mammals. Those crushing jaws could break bones, allowing it to eat marrow that other animals couldn't reach. Consequently, Pachycrocuta could gain sustenance from remains left behind by other predators. The game that Homo habilis worked so hard to obtain was easily stolen by these hyenas that hunted in packs. With fewer numbers, Homo habilis had little protection from them. However, a different hyena species, despite being smaller, was in some ways still more frightening. A species called Chasma porthetes lived, a hyena that looked like a dog. It was much more nimble and fast, roaming the expansive savannas. Its quickness presented a serious danger. The structure of its legs closely resembled that of a cheetah, giving it the name running hyena. Homo habilis was not a skilled runner. At best, they could perform some endurance running. They were unable to compete with the speed of Chasmoporthetes. Moreover, this hyena was a hypercarnivore, getting over 70% of its nutrients from meat. Interestingly, it had sharp teeth similar to those of big cats. But there was something even more terrifying than land-based hunters. Something lurked nearby. These were the enormous crocodiles hiding under the water. As mentioned earlier, Homo habilis liked fish, but had no fishing equipment or spears. They tried to catch fish using only their hands, which practically invited crocodiles to attack them. The most dangerous crocodile at that time was Crocodilus anthropophagus. Its name means man-eater, a crocodile that truly enjoyed eating people. In fact, fossil evidence supports this. At a certain dig site, the bones of two young Homo habilis were found. Their legs and feet had extensive injuries, with marks that exactly matched crocodile teeth. Their hunting method was the same as today's crocodiles. They would attack from ambush at the water's edge, bite into a leg, pull the victim underwater to cause drowning, or rotate their whole body to tear it apart. These violent episodes are not just conjecture, they are verified by data preserved in real fossils. Anthropophagus had very tough, armor-like scales covering its body. It was much bigger than a typical saltwater crocodile. Adults could reach lengths of 24.6 feet, equivalent to 7.5 miles, and weigh about 3,300 pounds, equivalent to 1.5 metric tons. The largest crocodile ever recorded, named Lolong, measured roughly 19.7 feet, equivalent to 6 miles, and weighed 2,420 pounds, equivalent to 1.1 metric tons. In comparison, Anthropophagus was substantially larger. A bite from such a large crocodile would always be deadly, allowing no possibility of living. Moreover, it had two horns sticking out above its eyes, making it look extremely fearsome. In fact, predators were not the only danger they encountered. Because of their diet and lifestyle, Homo habilis had to frequently interact with many herbivores and omnivores, including ancient rhinos, hippos, massive boars, elephants, and giraffes. Even though these creatures were not meat-eaters, a single encounter could be lethal, rendering them equally dangerous. In present-day Africa, herbivores and omnivores kill thousands of people every year. 2 million years ago, that threat was certainly much greater. This danger was especially high when they approached water to clean remains or fish, an area where hippos and rhinos were frequently found. However, besides all these hazards, a different problem troubled Homo habilis. That problem was with their teeth. Research indicates that out of the 26 excavated fossils, only 40% had healthy teeth. Most of the remaining fossils showed teeth that were absent, broken, or chipped. Remarkably, these dental problems started very early in life. The oldest fossil was only 25 years old, but even individuals under 10 already had severe tooth decay. A 17-year-old specimen had oral health that was twice as bad as a modern senior citizen's. The dental damage originated from their eating habits. Homo habilis foraged on carcasses left behind by other predators, feeding on the remaining parts. As a result, they had to chew on bones and grind tough meat fibers. Occasionally, they also needed to eat hard plant stalks or roots. They had no choice but to consume these items. Because they couldn't hunt by themselves, they didn't have the privilege of picking the best parts of food. Over time, this eating pattern put huge pressure on their teeth. Moreover, weather conditions made their difficulties even worse. In the period when Homo habilis lived, Africa underwent constant and intense climate changes. As temperatures fell and the terrain grew drier, the amount of available food decreased sharply. During shortages, they depended more on meat left by other meat eaters. This led to an increased death rate. As food became scarcer, run-ins with predators happened more frequently. The whole food chain's instability made predators more violent. Fierce competition brought another threat for Homo habilis. In particular, other species of Homo or near relatives among hominins. Remains of Homo habilis have been found together with 3 other Homo species and 1 hominin species. Those are Homo erectus, Homo rudolfensis, and Paranthropus boisei. Their relationships weren't just about living together peacefully. Sometimes, those interactions became aggressive. In fact, a Paranthropus fossil shows signs of an assault by Homo habilis. Some scientists propose that not only was this creature killed, but it might also have been eaten. But Homo habilis had a serious disadvantage when fighting other Homo species. For one, they were the tiniest species at that time and weren't well adapted to life on the ground. Crucially, their brains were too tiny. Their brains, unusually small compared to other Homo species, probably limited advanced thinking and strategic planning. As a result, differences in intelligence led to differences in survival skills. This gap is especially clear when looking at Homo erectus. Research shows that some Homo erectus brains were double the size of Homo habilis brains. That big difference wasn't just about size, but caused a split in intelligence and tool-making ability. Homo erectus controlled fire and made tools such as pickaxes, knives, and axes skills that would have given them a big edge in fighting. On the other hand, Homo habilis could only make the most basic stone tools. One of the primates back then was a giant baboon called Therapithecus, resembling today's baboons, but much bigger and stronger. This animal had long, sharp canine teeth, and its robust body was 3 times the size of Homo habilis. This huge baboon didn't actively pursue prey, but it was strong enough to kill a person, so scientists think it was a possible threat to Homo habilis. For me, the whole story, as I reconstruct it, I find it almost impossible to understand how Homo habilis could survive day after day. Every morning when they woke up, they had to climb down from the trees and go out onto the grasslands looking for food, where many predators would be waiting in hiding. If they went near the water to fish, they'd face giant crocodiles, saber-toothed cats larger than lions, and packs of hyenas scavenging for leftovers. Based on research, the most dangerous period for Homo habilis was around the age of 10. After that, the chance of death increased sharply. Actually, surviving to the age of 10 was an extraordinary accomplishment. More than half of all people died before reaching that point, and when newborns are included, 6 out of 10 failed to survive until adulthood. Seen from this perspective, the average lifespan might have been under 12 years. This leads to the question, how did Homo habilis manage to endure for 650,000 years in such a challenging environment? The secret to their survival might lie in their tools. Even though simple, stone implements enabled them to access bone marrow and fibrous plants that they preferred. Additionally, evidence of a windbreak forest and primitive huts dating back about 1.7 million years has been found, and these are thought to have been built by Homo habilis. In other words, they found ways to protect themselves as the climate became more extreme. Another factor in their survival was the size of their groups. Scientists believe that the group size of Homo habilis reached up to around a certain number of individuals. A larger number of companions meant more eyes and ears watching the surroundings. Because they lived in groups, the risk of being preyed upon decreased. When danger arose, they could either join forces to defend themselves or run away. But honestly, considering all aspects, their ability to persist was close to miraculous. Even with extremely high mortality rates, they did not become extinct and continued for hundreds of thousands of years. It is likely that the birth rate was very high. Although many died, even more young were born. Today's study of Homo habilis shows that its story is not just an ancient tale of sorrow. Moreover, this account stands as evidence of humanity's beginnings and the hardship and obstacles it overcame to reach its present state. The average lifespan of 12 years is not simply a cold number. It embodies the daily struggle and desperate will to survive that countless individuals endured. In the modern world, we enjoy an average life expectancy of 73 years. This is thanks to improvements in medicine, safe living environments, and consistent access to food and sanitation. We do not have to worry about being hunted, falling from trees, or being bitten by crocodiles while fishing with our bare hands. Although this way of life seems normal, when viewed against the entire 2.8 million year span of human history, our current lifestyle is a luxury that appeared only recently. Homo habilis went extinct around 1.65 million years ago. The exact reason why they disappeared remains unknown, but it was probably due to a mix of climate change and competition with other hominins. The later Homo erectus was larger, stronger, and more clever. They mastered fire, made more sophisticated tools, and adapted well to their environment. Eventually, the more vulnerable Homo habilis, once overtaken, gradually lost their place and disappeared from history without any fanfare. However, they did not disappear completely. Even if Homo habilis is not our direct ancestor, they play an essential role in the path of human evolution. They were among the first hominins to use stone tools and the first to regularly include meat in their diet. Although they mainly scavenged meat left by other predators rather than hunting actively, the protein gained boosted brain growth, serving as a crucial basis for later developments in human intelligence. Reflecting on their short and difficult lives, we see both the weakness and the strength of early humans. Even though they faced many hardships and extremely high death rates, they kept going. They had children, and those who survived continued to pass life on to later generations. Even if we continue to evolve and live longer lives in the future, the stories of our ancestors, like Homo habilis, should not be forgotten. Because without their suffering and efforts, our present existence would not be possible. Today's story focused on the toughest and most enduring species in the human family tree, Homo habilis.